Welcome to Tentpole Trauma, the podcast where we look at movies that came with hype and high hopes, but left with crushing disappointment, either critically, at the box office, or both. Freed from the weight of expectations, we seek to examine these underperformers under a new light, parsing through the good, the bad, and everything in between with the hopes of gaining a better understanding as to why they failed to find their audience. Warning, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie that we're discussing today, I suggest you stop the podcast and go watch it. Then when you come back and listen, you'll get more out of the discussion. On this episode, we explore the 1986 film, The Mosquito Coast. Okay, I am Sebastian, and I'm here with Jennifer.
Hello.
And we're doing one of our special editions where it's just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting together on the couch.
I love this.
And we're doing it real like lo-fi style.
Yep.
With just the Zoom quarter. It worked out fine last time.
It sure did.
And it's really low maintenance. And this episode, we're doing kind of a low maintenance movie. We're going to do The Mosquito Coast, the 1986 version by Peter Weir. Now, the reason why we've picked this film for this podcast, I know there's probably a ton of Mosquito Coast fans out there dying to hear our take on Mosquito Coast. But there is a new TV series,
yes,
starring Justin Theroux, that is based upon the same book that this 1986 film was based upon, by Paul Theroux. It's a 1981 novel, which is, roughly the same plot. But the basic story is a father and his family leave the modern world behind and go into, in this case, the jungle wilderness of South America to basically build their version of a utopia. There's more to it than that, but that's the basic gist. And I think that the new TV show kind of follows the same rough idea. The film was directed by Peter Weir, as I mentioned. Peter Weir is an Australian director, and you and I are actually kind of fans of his.
We are.
Low-key fans of Peter Weir. I really love the film Master and Commander, which came out in the aughts. I'm a big fan of that. We both really enjoy Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yep. He did Dead Poets Society. He did The Truman Show.
Witness,
which is great.
Year of Living Dangerously is another one.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good. Gallipoli, starring Mel Gibson. The Last Wave, which I really like. It's sort of a sci-fi film from 1977.
So, yeah, we're fans of Peter Weir.
Yeah, he's a really great director. And this film, I think, is pretty well directed. It stars Harrison Ford in the lead, which in 1986, Harrison Ford was not necessarily known for doing a lot of dramatic roles. He was known as Han Solo in Indiana Jones and being in Blade Runner. So this was a pretty big departure for him. Witness was the year before, which Peter Weir had already directed. So he already had a sort of working relationship with Peter Weir. And it also stars Helen Mirren.
That's right.
As the mother of the family. And it stars River Phoenix, a young actor that we lost at a young age, which is sad because he was really good.
Yep.
And it also stars Martha Plimpton and Andre Gregory.
Yes.
From My Dinner with Andre, which you can hear Jennifer and I discuss on the
My Dinner with Andre.
Right. It's a podcast by our friends Whitney Seibold and William Bibbiani.
Yes.
So if you'd like to hear us discuss an even more scintillating film than this, you can go over there and check that out. You said you had some trivia about the film.
Oh, yeah. So River Phoenix and Harrison Ford had a really close bond. And after this film, he personally recommended River Phoenix to be young Indy in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yep.
Because he really felt like River looked a lot like him when he was that age.
He kind of does. Yeah, I can see that.
And also, out of all of his movies, Harrison Ford considers this to be his favorite.
Really? Interesting.
Yep. And he even said there was something along the lines in the trivia here. I'm trying to find it. Where he said this was the only movie where he didn't it didn't make its money back,
Mm-hmm.
but like he still didn't care. Like it
Right.
was just, he felt that strongly about this film. Another piece of trivia was Jack Nicholson was going to be in the lead
Huh.
as the Harrison Ford role of Allie.
I can see that.
Yeah, and apparently he didn't want to do it because they shot this in Belize
Uh-huh.
and he couldn't watch Laker games there.
Okay. Good enough reason, I
Yeah,
guess.
that was, yeah, exactly, like because it was going to be in Belize and he couldn't do it. They also considered Corey Haim to
Uh-huh.
be in the River Phoenix role of
I can
Charlie
see that,
Fox,
yeah.
but his father, who was his manager at the time,
Mm-hmm.
turned it down in favor of him being the star in Lucas, which came out around the same time.
Right. I think, we won by getting River Phoenix in this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Corey Haim's a good actor, but it's so this is much more of, well, I was gonna say also, I was thinking about this, not to jump ahead, but when we're watching the film, I was thinking about how a lot of this is parallel to River's real life
Right, yes.
because of his family, and then I
Mhm.
was reading that actually in the trivia also, his family actually was stationed in Venezuela because they
Hmm.
were involved in this Children of God group,
Right.
cult, whatever. And he was motivated to take this part, really wanted this part because it was very similar to a lot of things that had happened in his childhood.
Right.
But they also kind of were going to pass on him at first because they felt he was too old to
Mm-hmm.
be, because he was already like 15 to be Charlie.
Uh-huh.
But they just couldn't find the right Charlie, and so they ended up being okay with him playing the role because he's great.
Yeah, he's perfectly fine,
Yeah.
and I don't see why he would need to be any younger, but...
I don't know. It's just the trivia.
Now, I remember seeing this film on cable TV. It was not a big hit in the cinemas, which is why it's on Tentpole Trauma. It was a $25 million movie that didn't even make $1 million on its opening weekend in the States, and I don't think it even cleared 5 altogether. So it's a bomb. Pretty expensive movie for the time in 1986. I mean, 25 million,
Yep.
that was like the cost of a
bucks.
Star Wars movie or something at that time. So, yeah, big financial disappointment. So, I didn't see it in the theater, and I don't know anyone who did.
Oh, but you do.
Do I? Who?
This girl.
You saw Mosquito Coast in the theater?
You bet I did.
Wow.
So my parents' money went towards the measly earnings.
The $100,000 it made on its opening weekend?
Yep, I was there. I've been trying to think how that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and I can only surmise that it's because of, loving Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how this film was marketed, but for whatever reason, like, I was there, and
All I remember from the marketing was just Harrison Ford's like haggard like face. That's all they had. They just sold it on his face.
yeah. Well, that was like the poster,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
remember.
saying.
Yeah, I remember the poster. But I mean, as far as like catching like a trailer or something
Yeah.
to entice you to go, I don't know.
They were probably thinking Harrison Ford, the jungle. You'll think
Yeah.
it's Indiana Jones.
Sure.
It's going to be just as fun.
Boy,
It really is
it
not
is
fun.
not. It's definitely, this movie is a lot of things,
not fun.
but fun is not. There's no fun to be had here.
Nope.
There will be no joy.
It's pretty miserable, but not miserable to watch.
Oh, absolutely not. No, but I mean, it's interesting because seeing it then and on the big screen, and then I'm sure I saw bits and pieces of it like you did on TV over the years, but I haven't 100% haven't sat through it again until now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really truly something that's not for a child to watch.
No. Unless you want your child to have horrible nightmares.
But it's like, now being middle-aged and watching it, it's a completely different experience than
Yeah.
I'm having.
I remember watching it on cable TV because it would be on cable pretty regularly, and I was old enough at the time to be able to appreciate it for what it was to a certain extent. Of course, my sympathies were entirely with the Charlie character
Oh,
because
yeah.
I was that
You're
age,
identifying.
and I
yeah.
could identify with him to the degree that any teenager can identify with hating your parents, which I think is a theme that
Mhm.
really comes to the fore in this film.
Oh.
So I could kind of relate to it on a certain level, and to your point now, coming back to it in middle age, I can really see a lot more in it. And I have not watched it from beginning to end since I saw it on cable.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I watched it from beginning to end ever in one sitting back then. I would kind of catch pieces of it and kind of get engrossed in it and then probably go do something else. So shall we get into the movie?
Let's get into it.
We join the Fox family, led by Harrison Ford's Allie Fox, and they are living in America working on an asparagus farm.
Mm-hmm.
And Allie, or we'll just call him Harrison Ford.
Or Father.
Father is really what I
Yeah.
think his name is in the credits. Father is a really brilliant man. He is an inventor, and he has a bunch of patents on all these inventions. We're getting this information in narration form from River Phoenix's character of Charlie, and he is really disenfranchised with the American dream. The first scene, they're just sort of driving through the town, wherever it is, and we just see fast food chains and strip malls and stuff, and he's just sort of ranting about how America has gone to shit. He stops by a hardware store to get some piping or something, and he can't get American-made piping from Jason Alexander,
Yes.
who's working at the store, and throws kind of a little fit, and it's very clear that the hardware store clerk played by Jason Alexander has dealt with him before, and he's an exasperating human being. Then we see him at his quote-unquote job on the asparagus farm, and the farmer is at his wit's end with him because he's just trying to get him to...
He tried to get him to, was hired to put in some sort of cooling system.
Yes.
Because the farmer has all of his asparagus, which is like going bad.
Yeah.
Because they can't refrigerate it or whatnot. So he's been hired to do a specific job, which he obviously, in addition to being an inventor, has some sort of background in AC or cooling or something like that, because it's kind of a thing that he goes back to.
Yes.
So he's getting these parts, and what he's getting them for is he's not just hooking up an air conditioner or cooler or something like that, as he's been hired to do. He's created this machine. It's an invention that runs on fire.
Yes.
Because he lights a match and throws it in there, and through science he's able to create ice.
Yeah,
and
pretty much instantaneously.
Yes. And, the farmer is like, wow, that's great. But
he's showing up to the farmer with this prototype and going like, look how great this is. And the farmer's like, it is really impressive, but this doesn't help me now.
Right. He's like, it's not to scale model. I'm going to build you a giant one. And he's like, yeah, but my asparagus is going bad. And he's like, and the actor is a character actor. I can't, he's been in a bunch of stuff that he's dealing with.
He is, yeah.
But yeah, he's having a complete meltdown because his crops are going bad.
Yes. So we get the sense from this that Father is a brilliant man, but he is frustrating and in many ways impractical because he puts his sort of passions and ideas that he has in front of doing what he needs to do to, have a normal quote unquote life.
He puts them in front of everything.
In front of everything.
Like nothing. Like as time goes on, and we'll get into the story, but that's the moral of the story is there's nothing that's going to stop Father's passions.
Right. So while he's sort of milling around this farm that he's working on and getting frustrated, he notices the farmhands that work there, and they are all from South America. Mm-hmm. And he gets this idea in his head that he wants to bring this ice contraption that he's made to the jungles of South America because they don't have ice there, and he can bring civilization to them in the form of ice. So he picks out a location on the Mosquito Coast in South America and just decides to pack up the family and move them all there. The family is 2 teenage boys and 2 twins, girls.
Probably I don't know, 7 or 8 or so.
Right. And mother. So they're, a 6-person family total. But the younger teenage boy, whose name is Jerry, or he's probably 11, or he might be 12. He's
maybe.
preteen.
Yeah.
he's got a bad feeling about this and he really doesn't want to go. And he says, like, something really bad is going to happen if we go. But Helen Mirren's character of Mother believes in Father for the most part and tells him that it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be the greatest thing in the world, that they're going to go live in the jungle. So they do.
Can I just say also, like, how I would never choose a place that had mosquito in the name?
I know. That would be
That was like just a hard pass.
Surprisingly, they don't touch upon how many mosquitoes
No.
they must be dealing with in this movie, even though it's called Mosquito Coast. You'd think they'd be complaining about the mosquitoes more than they do. I know I would.
I wouldn't want any part of it.
So they get on a boat called the Unicorn, which I thought was kind of a little clever detail because unicorns are things that aren't real. And this dream of Father's is a false dream. So I felt that was probably a bit of symbolism, intentional symbolism in the movie. But on the boat, there is a family led by a preacher, and they are missionaries. And there's some pretty great exchanges between Father and this missionary priest played by Andre Gregory.
Yes.
Andre Gregory is wonderful in this movie. He's very sort of a little bit over the top, but in just the right way as this sort of preacher. Father is so smart that he can quote all the scripture back at the preacher, but he doesn't buy into any of it, so he kind of makes fun of it. There's a really great line where the missionary preacher says something about, God will open the door or whatever, and he tells him, like, well, then don't let him hit you on the way out. Which I really appreciated.
You did. You laughed out loud.
I
literally.
chuckled.
You chuckled.
Yeah, I like irreverence towards religion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty of that. But another thing that is established here is River Phoenix and the preacher's daughter, played by Martha Plimpton, who doesn't seem to be completely on board with her family's religious leanings.
Not in the least.
She's listening to her Walkman and chewing gum or whatever. She just seems like a normal 80s teen.
Cute teen. She's so cute in this.
Yeah, Martha Plimpton is great. So she's kind of making fun of River Phoenix's character because he's kind of hopelessly out of touch because his family is out of touch.
Yes.
But at the same time, she thinks he's cute because he's River Phoenix and he is very cute.
Yes.
He was a dreamy teen.
Absolutely.
And she tells him that she's got a crush on him and that she thinks about him when she goes to the bathroom.
And nobody knows what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that now. Like, I'm like, what? It's just such an odd thing to say. And he's just like, his face is
is great when she says it.
And then like later on, he sees her and she mouths it to him.
Yeah.
She's like, I think about you when I go to the bathroom.
Right.
With her like cute little sunglasses on.
Yeah. She does a shade tip.
She does do a shade tip. That's right.
They meet up with Mr. Hattie, who's sort of their guide, I'd say. He's sort of their liaison in a way. Really affable, nice guy with sort of like little dreadlocks. And he brings them to Panama or somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where they are, but they're in sort of like a smaller town. And while they're there, Father arranges with some drunk in a bar or something to buy a town.
Yes.
Or that's how it's sort of sold to him.
That's how we're informed of that. We don't see it go down. It's off screen.
It's off screen.
But that's what he comes back and he's like, I bought a town. I bought it from like the mayor or something.
Right. Some white man, an older white man who's drinking in a bar.
Yeah.
We just see sort of flashes of it. We don't see the actual conversation. So he carts them all up, Mr. Hattie and a bunch of other people that they sort of recruit. They get into a boat and they go upriver. And at this part of the movie, I started to feel like the creature from the Black Lagoon should be coming out because they're going up a river in a boat that looks pretty much just like the boat that goes up the river in Creature from the Black Lagoon. I really could have gone for the creature showing up at this point.
It would have been great. And the kids are just like hanging off the boat. It's just, the creature would have fit in right there. But we forgot also when because I think Father tells Mr. Hattie, because like he needs to tell him where they're going.
Yeah.
And he's like, I bought a town or whatever. Geronimo is the town.
Right.
And Mr. Hattie's like, why would you want to go to Geronimo? Like, like no one's really who knows
Yeah,
about
the
it.
locals
The
aren't
locals aren't
super
like, they're
stoked
like,
on it.
okay,
Yeah. This is definitely the point at which I would have checked out as a child. Like, if I was along for this journey, I'd already be done here. I'd be like, where are we going? This looks like Creature from the Black Lagoon. They go up the river. They arrive at Geronimo to find that it is basically just like a collection of huts in the jungle, like sort of near the river.
It's very underwhelming, and even father is underwhelmed. Like when he comes, he comes running up kind of this kind of hill a little bit
Yeah.
to the quote unquote town, and sees it's like, yeah, it's kind of just run down huts and just kind of a mess. And you see him kind of like, oh, but he's got to keep it up.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, this is great. And like you see Helen Mirren come up, and she's just like, I mean, it's just all these crestfallen faces,
Yeah.
one by one, of
Yeah.
like, this is where we're going to live.
Yes. It looks horrible.
Yeah.
And there are some people living there in huts, but they are just sort of like, who are these people showing up? But he has a lot of enthusiasm to build this community. And yeah, he is always trying to put a bright face on it. But even at this point of the movie, you feel like, okay, he's just completely on this mission, and there's no way he's going to let anything slow his roll at all.
Yeah.
And he gets everybody to work really hard, and they basically tear down the town that's there and build this whole new town.
Yep.
It looks like a lot of really grueling, hard work that goes on and on and on, but everybody seems to be on board.
Well, definitely. I mean, he's really good about, especially the people that are working. It's very much like a community. He's like asking the people that are working with him, because
Right.
he is he's the leader, but he is trying to be democratic about things. And he's like, what do you want to build first? What do you want to do? And,
Yeah.
you're going to go build the fish farm. And
Right.
like, do you want to go do this or whatever?
But nobody's actually saying anything. He's presenting it to them as if they have a say in it. And technically, I guess they would, but nobody says anything.
Yeah.
So he basically is just like, okay, well, then you're going to go build
Yeah.
the fish farm, and you're going to do this.
But
So-
everybody's like seemingly going along with it, and
Right.
seeming like they're into it. And I mean, it is improving things.
This part of the movie was actually a little surprising to me, because I thought things were going to go off the rails pretty quickly. But what we get for this next section of the film is things go well, really. It's hard work, and everybody's really tired, and it's gross and hot and sweaty. But eventually he builds a bunch of houses.
Yep.
He, sort of landscapes the land. He builds a really kind of nice house for him and his family, and everybody seems to be pretty happy.
He's got a nice garden started, and
Yeah.
like I said, they're doing this fish thing, and it just seems like things are going along. And then he decides to make the giant ice maker
Yes.
that he had made the prototype for back at the asparagus farm.
It's called Fat Boy.
Yeah, they call
he
it
calls
Fat
it
Boy.
Fat
Calls
Boy.
it Fat Boy because he refers to it like it has organs.
Right.
Like he's like, this pipe is its lungs, and this pipe is its poop chute, or whatever he
Yeah,
said.
no, they say that. Yes.
Yeah, and then like this, this section is his kidneys. So he's referring to the machine, and he does that earlier on as well with the smaller prototype when he's showing it his kids. He's making it in reference to anatomical,
Right.
like the human body.
But it's a giant structure. I
It's
mean, it's
huge.
the size of a building.
Like a silo or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big.
It looks like a silo building
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah.
Once it's done, and it has siding on it and everything.
Yeah.
But the machine works. They fire it up, and it makes ice, and they run long tubing to like the house. So
Yep.
now they can have air conditioning. So, and they put tubing all throughout the town, quote, a village or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. So people have air conditioning in their huts or whatever. So it seems like a pretty great place, and everybody seems pretty stoked about
Everyone
it.
seems pretty stoked except for father. And this is when I'm just like, and I know we have to have a story.
Yeah.
This is the book. There has to be conflict.
Yes.
However, like things are livable and good now.
Right.
And, and you can just tell because this character, like he doesn't ever want to be comfortable.
Right.
He really doesn't.
Yeah.
And so like in River Phoenix, I think is narrating something. And he's like, father's starting to get bored and frustrated.
Yeah, they're giving people giant chunks of ice for free.
Yeah.
So they've got this whole thing worked out where ice is like sliding down to the river to these boats, and it looks like great. Everyone's so excited and coming to get ice, and father's sitting there kind of scowling watching this all happen, and River Phoenix is like,
here we go.
Yeah. So
I've seen this look.
So this is basically the event that sets a chain of events in motion in which everything falls to shit.
Yes.
And what happens is father hears word of a tribe that's living somewhat near their village, and he gets all excited because he wants to bring them ice because they've never seen ice before.
But it's not too near their village.
Right. It turns out it's actually like 2 days journey over mountains and everything, and he's taken the boys with them, and poor Jerry, who's already not really on board with all of this, is really having a tough time. And they actually camp for a night near some like ruins or whatever, and Jerry wants to go sleep in the ruins, and he's like, you want me to get you a hotel room too? Should we order room service too? And like just completely,
you want a king bed, Jerry? Yeah. I know I do. Here's some quarters for the jukebox. Right. And it's like, poor Jerry. Like I feel so sad for him. I'm like, he's just like out. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
And all because they're carrying this damn block of ice.
Which is melting rapidly.
You just see it getting smaller and smaller.
Right. So, it's a complete fool's errand to begin with. And he's totally ragging on poor Jerry for not being enough of a man. To want to go make the lean-to that they can sleep in for the night. But River Phoenix is looking out for his brother and trying to, prop him up. Charlie, the River Phoenix's character, believes in his dad, and his dad is his hero. So even though he can see that there's some real problems here, he also continues to believe in his father's dream of creating this utopia. So they finally arrive at this village of natives, and these are like hardcore natives who are mostly naked and have facial tattoos and spears and bows and arrows. By the time they've gotten there, father's all excited. He has his duffel bag that's still got this one chunk of ice that he's wrapped in leaves and he goes to pull it out, and of course it's melted. So they don't even present the natives with the ice, but father notices that in this village he sees these he thinks they're white people.
It was actually River Phoenix.
Phoenix.
He noticed because everyone's got spears on father, and it's like a whole thing. And River Phoenix is like, because father says, like, they've never seen a white man before.
Right.
And then Charlie, River Phoenix is like, Dad, I think I see a white guy over there. So then Harrison Ford goes over to investigate what's happening. And then again, this is off screen.
Right. We don't really see what transpires here.
Right. But then he comes back and he's like, we
gotta go.
We gotta go. And as they're like running off, he's telling them that these men have been captured by the tribe. And so he told them, like, do you want me to get help? And they said, no, they had a plan.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, if you get out, like, this is where Geronimo is, come see us.
Right. Which turns out to be a terrible idea because the men do get out. And it turns out these men were not prisoners of the tribe, but they are some sort of Panamanian guerrillas or something.
Mercenaries.
They're mercenaries. Yeah. And they show up at the town. And they've got guns, and they are clearly there for no good.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty obvious right away that they're trouble, and everybody realizes it. And it becomes really tense. This part of the movie I found really tense, and I remember seeing this when I was younger, because these three guys come in, and they just kind of make themselves at home and start eating the fruit, and poor Mr. Hattie's scared out of his mind. So father's making this ridiculous show of trying to be hospitable, but he clearly understands that they're trouble. Mm-hmm. So he's just trying to like keep them sort of placated while he figures out what to do, he's like, well, you guys are leaving soon, right? Like, you can take my boat. Like,
Yeah.
we've got a boat. You can go take, please, no, take it. It's yours. Take it. You probably want to go up to Panama because that'll be good for you up there. And,
they're like, no, we like it here.
They're like, we like it here. And, they're giving Helen Mirren
the eye. Just
and
being gross.
Yeah, it's so.
And so, so then father is just coming up with all kinds of wild bullshit. Like, well, you can't stay here. This place is infested with ants.
Right.
And it's like the mercenaries are just not having it.
They're like, we don't see any ants.
He's like, well, if you could see them,
right,
we could kill them and that wouldn't be a problem. And then he starts saying they're termites. So then he proceeds to have everyone start destroying the village.
Yes.
Which is just, I guess there's nothing, what's the point of having this village if you can't get rid of these people? Like, I get it in some way, but it's also just like so hard and frustrating to watch all this hard work being thrown away.
Well, we forgot to mention it, but one thing about the village is that a lot of the people had left because the missionaries led by Andre Gregory showed up, and he had been already sort of spreading the gospel, and him and father had a confrontation, and the preacher scared some of the people there into leaving with him because he's got a missionary set up somewhere else. So a lot of the villagers were already gone. So they were destroying their houses that they had already sort of abandoned.
Right. That's true. Yeah, because they had showed up. The missionaries had showed up again when they were off on this ice-capade.
Yes. So the houses they were destroying were unoccupied, but they keep destroying more and more stuff because these mercenaries aren't buying it and they're not leaving. So eventually they start to really sort of hone in on Helen Mirren, and at that point father realizes that he's got to do something. So he tells the mercenaries that he's got the bunkhouse all set up for them, and like the boys are like, bunkhouse? We have a bunkhouse?